Beneath the farms of Cappadocia lies one of the most extraordinary cities ever built. You're standing at the entrance of Derinkuyu in 700 CE, looking down into a city that exists 60 meters beneath the earth. It was carved deliberately underground to hide 20,000 people when the Arab raids sweep across the region. 20,000 people carved this city into darkness. This isn't a mine. It isn't a cave repurposed. It's an entire civilization built downward instead of outward. Built in darkness instead of light. Built to be invisible. Behind you, the volcanic plains of Cappadocia produce grain that feeds entire provinces of the Byzantine Empire. The soil here is rich from ancient eruptions. Ash from centuries of volcanic activity has been transformed into fertility. The harvests are essential. But the region is a front line. Arab raids are constant and predictable. The frontier between Byzantine and Arab territory is permeable and violent. Caravans are attacked. Settlements are burned. Soldiers garrison the region, but their protection isn't guaranteed. One powerful raid and the defense collapses. You cannot build a visible city in a war zone. You cannot store wealth that can be burned by raiders. You cannot farm grain that is undefended and vulnerable. So the engineers carved downward. They created a city that doesn't exist on the surface. A population that can disappear within hours if warning comes. A refuge that is invisible until you know where to look. This is what desperation looks like when engineered by brilliant minds. The stone discs near the entrance are massive, carved in circles that fit the passage exactly. Some weigh more than 500 kilograms. If raiders descend, defenders can roll these down. The passage becomes sealed. Safety requires entrapment. Protection requires imprisonment. It's defense and dependence simultaneously. Once sealed, they can only be opened from the inside. Whoever is below is trapped. Whoever is above is locked out. Families understand this calculus perfectly. They understand that sealing the door means survival in darkness or death by the sword. Step down into the first level. Your eyes adjust to lamplight. Oil lamps in alcoves provide the only illumination. The light flickers with the movement of air currents. The temperature drops immediately. It's noticeable, cool but not cold. The humidity is present. You can feel it on your skin. Dawn system. Water drips somewhere in the distance, the sound amplified by stone, echoing through chambers endlessly. Your footsteps echo in ways that feel monitored by the rock itself. You cannot move silently here. Every step announces your presence. 8 stories of stone sit above your head. The weight is almost physical. You can feel the pressure of the earth above you. The architecture adjusts to this pressure. Walls grow thicker deeper down, ceilings lower, chambers shrink. The further down you go, the more the earth dominates the space. You're not just underground, you're being squeezed by rock. You're inside the mountain itself. The central feature of Derinkuyu is a massive vertical shaft that drops nearly 60 meters through the rock. It runs from the deepest level all the way to the surface. It functions as both ventilation and water access. Every level of the city connects to it. The engineers understood something fundamental about survival underground. Air must move. Water must flow. A single vertical axis serves both purposes. This shaft is the lifeline of the entire city. In summer, the cool air from the depths rises naturally. In winter, warm air sinks and circulates. The system is passive. It requires no pumps, no slaves turning wheels, just the laws of thermodynamics engineered into stone. The residential chambers show careful engineering. Each family has multiple rooms, sleeping chambers, storage, kitchen spaces. The rooms connect through narrow passages. The ceilings are low enough that tall people must duck. The ventilation shafts run through walls as narrow openings, barely wide enough for a hand. Engineers calculated their placement precisely. They calculated airflow for 20,000 people in sealed spaces. There's no excess capacity. One blocked shaft and the air quality degrades rapidly. One breach in the water system and contamination spreads through the entire network. The margin for error is non-existent. The math is exact. There's no safety net. There's no forgiveness in the system. Walk deeper and you see the storage chambers. The grain holds the region's entire annual harvest. Thousands of tons stored in enormous carved rooms. The ceiling rises 20 feet high. The floor extends 40 feet in every direction. This is the surplus that keeps the empire fed. The city can support 20,000 people for 1 year. 2 years if they ration strictly, 3 if they're desperate. After that, they starve. The grain stores are a countdown. The water system is a marvel of engineering. Springs exist underground. The city was built around these sources. Channels carved from stone carry water to cisterns. The cisterns are sealed to prevent contamination. The ventilation shaft that drops 60 meters also provides access to deep water reserves. Water distributes through narrow aqueducts carved with precision. It's a closed system. It's also a point of vulnerability. The engineers know this. They've designed redundancy. Multiple water sources, multiple cisterns, multiple distribution routes. But redundancy requires constant maintenance. Workers clear sediment from channels regularly. They monitor the water quality obsessively. They repair cracks in stone that threaten the integrity of the system. The maintenance is invisible but essential. Without it, the system fails within weeks. The ventilation system is perhaps the most sophisticated engineering. The shafts do more than provide air. Some function as wells, and bringing water from underground sources. Some have stone structures that create draft, improving airflow naturally. By positioning shafts at different levels and depths, the engineers created circulation. Hot air rises, cool air sinks. Air moves through the deepest levels without stagnation. The calculation was precise. The understanding of thermodynamics without calling it by that name. This is how you survive when buried alive. The population is dense. Families live in small carved chambers. There's minimal privacy. Children play in narrow corridors. Adults work in confined spaces. The air is humid from breath and water systems. Cooking fires in kitchens send smoke through ventilation shafts. The smell is constant. Human waste is disposed of in designated sealed chambers. The smell rises from those chambers despite the ceiling. 20,000 people sharing narrow corridors, dim light and recycled air. The psychological weight is enormous, but it's temporary. When the raids subside, when the threat passes, people climb back to daylight. They return to the surface. They return to sky. The chamber's empty. The systems stop being maintained. The city becomes dormant. The darkness waits. You can see the labor that maintains this system. Workers in corridors carrying water containers. Workers climbing into ventilation shafts to clear debris. Workers monitoring the grain stores. This isn't a city that functions passively. It requires constant active maintenance. If this labor stops, the system degrades. The city is only as strong as the people who maintain it. The Arab-Byzantine frontier is the context for all of this. The Umayyad Caliphate under Caliph al-Walid is expanding northward relentlessly. Byzantine control is becoming less certain with each season. The raids are becoming more sophisticated and coordinated. Entire settlements are abandoned. Fortifications fall. The empire calculates the cost of defending the region, but Cappadocia's grain is essential. Entire Byzantine provinces depend on it, so the empire protects it. Soldiers garrison the region. Fortifications are built, but the farmers know that defense isn't guaranteed. The city below is insurance. It's a way to preserve the population and the harvest if the surface becomes temporarily untenable. It's a bet that the threat is temporary, that someday the threat will pass, that someday they can return to sunlight. Religious spaces are carved into the rock, Byzantine chapels with simple altars. The prayers are for safety, for harvest, for soldiers fighting on the frontier, for the protection of farmers and families above. The faith is mixed with pragmatism. The people pray. But they've also engineered solutions. They've created alternatives to hoping. They've built a city that can exist without the surface world, temporarily if necessary. The faith sustains them, but the engineering protects them. Both are essential. Both are necessary. The city that exists here in 700 CE is not permanent. It's temporary. It's insurance. When the raids come, when warning spreads that danger is approaching, 20,000 people descend into darkness. They bring livestock. They bring supplies. They carry what they can. They settle into chambers. They wait. Days pass. Weeks pass. Some families spend months underground during periods of intense threat. The ventilation shafts bring sounds from above, muffled, distant. The crying of children echoes in chambers. The oil lamps burn constantly, consuming resources. The water flows through channels. The grain remains in storage. The system functions. And then, when the danger passes, when scouts report that the raiders have moved on, they climb back to sunlight. They return to the surface. They return to their homes. They return to farming. The city empties. The chambers go quiet. The ventilation shafts stop carrying voices. The system waits for the next threat. This is Derinkuyu in 700 CE, a city carved 60 meters into volcanic rock, connected by a central vertical shaft, engineered to hide 20,000 people from Arab raids. The ventilation system is sophisticated. The water system is redundant. The grain storage is calculated. The defense mechanisms are brutal. The engineering is brilliant. It's not built for comfort. It's not built for permanence. It's built for survival. For temporary refuge. For preserving a population and a harvest that the Empire cannot afford to lose. The refugees descend into darkness knowing they're safe from swords and fire, but they depend on systems that require constant maintenance. They depend on grain stores that have limits, on ventilation that could become blocked, on water sources that could become contaminated. They depend on the surface world continuing to function and the threat eventually passing. Because failure means suffocation. Failure means starvation. Failure means entrapment. Failure means death in darkness. Above ground, the wind moves through the fields of Cappadocia. The farms continue producing grain for an empire. Raiders pass through the valleys. Soldiers stand guard on visible fortifications. Caravans arrive with goods from distant lands. The market continues. The trade continues. The life above continues. And beneath it all, 60 meters below the earth, an entire city waits in darkness. Its chambers are empty now. Its corridors are silent. But the system is ready. The ventilation shafts are open and waiting. The water flows through channels carved centuries ago. The grain is stored. The stone discs stand ready to seal at a moment's notice. Everything waits. The people who live in Derinkuyu during the calm seasons return daily to check the system. They maintain the passages. They test the water. They ensure the ventilation shafts are clear. They touch the stone. They listen to the echoes. They remember that this city exists. They remember what it means. They remember that when the warning comes, when the scouts ride in with news of approaching raiders, they have only hours to gather supplies and descend. To seal themselves in, to trust the systems they've built, to trust the engineering that keeps them alive in darkness, and somewhere above, the next threat is already gathering. The Arab expansion continues, the frontier shifts. The balance remains precarious. The city of Derinkuyu will be needed again. It always is. It always will be. Until someday it isn't. When the threat finally passes, will they stay below out of fear, or climb back to the light and abandon the city forever? Derinkuyu waits. It's built for cycles, for descent and emergence, for temporary refuge that might never be temporary again. This is Derinkuyu.